"Oh shit." That's all his father heard before the line went dead. No scream. No crash. Just 2 words, and then nothing. That was the last time anyone ever heard Brandon Swanson's voice. It was the early hours of May 14, 2008, when 19-year-old Brandon Swanson, a college student from Marshall, Minnesota, was driving home from a small end-of-semester get-together. He wasn't drunk, he wasn't reckless, just a regular kid making the same late-night drive he'd done dozens of times before. But sometime after midnight, on the rural roads that thread through western Minnesota's farmland, Brandon's car slid off the gravel shoulder into a ditch. The engine stalled. He wasn't hurt. His headlights still worked. He pulled out his phone and called home. On the other end, his parents, Brian and Annette Swanson, were half asleep when they picked up. Their son sounded calm. He explained that he'd gone off the road near the small town of Lind, just a few miles from home. He thought he could see the lights of Marshall glowing faintly in the distance. He asked them to come pick him up. They agreed immediately. His father grabbed the keys and headed out, keeping Brandon on the phone the entire time so they could flash their lights when they got close. The problem was, they never found him. When Brian arrived in the area Brandon described, the road was empty. There was no sign of the car, no sign of his son. Brandon, still on the phone, insisted he could see them, their headlights, but they couldn't see his. Confused, they each flashed their high beams again. Still nothing. The fields on either side were dark, open, and flat. Somewhere, 2 cars were a few miles apart on parallel roads, both believing they were in the same place. After about 47 minutes of continuous talking, frustration gave way to laughter between them. Brandon sounded tired but level-headed. When his father suggested they both head toward the town of Lind and meet there, Brandon agreed. He said he would start walking along the road to the nearest intersection and meet them. His father heard the crunch of gravel beneath his footsteps through the phone speaker. The sound faded in and out with the weak rural signal. Then, at 2:30 a.m., Brian heard Brandon say, "Oh shit." And then, silence. For a moment, Brian thought the call had dropped. He tried calling back, once, twice, 10 times. Each call rang, then went to voicemail. Annette, now panicking, dialed their local police department to report their son missing. But as in so many stories like this, the clock worked against them. Police told them it was normal for college students to go missing overnight, that he'd probably show up in the morning. He didn't. At sunrise, Brian retraced every mile of his drive from the night before. And there it was, Brandon's green Chevy Lumina, neatly positioned in a ditch along a gravel road northwest of Taunton, nearly 25 miles away from where he'd said he was. The car's doors were unlocked, and the key was gone. There were no footprints leading away, no sign of struggle, and the grass around the car was undisturbed. It was as if he'd simply stepped out, and vanished. The search that followed grew rapidly. Dozens of officers, volunteers, and K-9 units scoured the area. The scent dogs followed Brandon's trail for nearly 3 miles along a gravel road, through fields, over fences, and toward a small stream called the Yellow Medicine River. There, the scent abruptly stopped. Not trailed off, stopped. Divers searched the river repeatedly. No body, no clothing, no phone, nothing. Investigators pieced together what little they had. Brandon was on the phone for almost an hour, calm, sober, logical. He wasn't hallucinating or lost in a panic. So how could someone vanish mid-sentence, in flat open land, without a single footprint leading away? For Brian and Annette, that 47-minute call became a loop they could never escape. The sound of gravel underfoot. The soft hum of the wind through the line. And those final 2 words, OSH*T, echoing through static. Whatever happened to Brandon Swanson that night didn't happen fast. It happened in silence. By the second day, search crews realized the terrain around Brandon's last known location wasn't as simple as it looked. Western Minnesota is a patchwork of gravel roads, farmland, and drainage ditches, broken up by deep fields, small creeks, and thick grass that can swallow footprints in a single rain. Helicopters scanned from above. Local farmers opened their barns and sheds. Every mile between Taunton and Porter was combed. And yet, not one trace of Brandon was found. The Yellow Medicine River, where the dogs lost his scent, became the focus. It wasn't a massive river, shallow in most areas, but deceptive. In the dark, one wrong step could send someone tumbling into cold water. Searchers used sonar, dragged nets, even drained sections. Still, nothing. Not his phone. Not his keys. Not a single piece of clothing. If Brandon had drowned, logic said something, anything, should have surfaced. But the river gave nothing back. Then came the unsettling detail that haunted investigators. Brandon had told his father he was walking toward lights. He said he could see a town in the distance, lights shining faintly across the fields. But the geography didn't make sense. From where his car was found, the nearest town wasn't visible. Those lights may have been from distant farmhouses or even highway lamps miles away. If he followed them, he could have easily walked in the wrong direction, deeper into rural blackness, away from the road entirely. Days turned into weeks. The Swanson family watched the volunteer lines grow smaller each morning. Search dogs were exhausted. Helicopters stopped coming. And finally, after over 500 volunteers and 122 square miles covered, the official search was suspended. Brian and Annette refused to stop. They walked those same dirt roads themselves, day after day, calling their son's name into the wind. Nothing ever answered back. Theories multiplied. Some believed Brandon had accidentally fallen into an unmarked well or sinkhole, hidden under grass or washed out by spring flooding. Others suggested disorientation. He could have walked in circles, collapsed from exhaustion, and been missed by search lines. The most controversial idea came from locals who whispered about foul play, that maybe someone had picked him up after the call, and whatever happened next was covered by the darkness of that rural night. But there was no evidence, no witnesses, no one else seen on the road. The Swansons' pain was amplified by bureaucracy. Because Brandon was 19, legally an adult, police delayed the search that first night, assuming he'd gone off voluntarily. It was a mistake that cost hours of daylight and potentially the chance to find him alive. In the years that followed, his parents fought to change that. They lobbied the state legislature for new laws that would treat missing adults under suspicious circumstances as true emergencies, not runaways. In 2009, Minnesota passed Brandon's law, in his name. Brandon's law now requires police to immediately begin investigations when an adult is reported missing under unusual or dangerous conditions. It's been credited with saving lives, ensuring no other parent hears the same dismissive phrase the Swansons did, "He's probably fine." But for Brian and Annette, no law could fill the silence left by that last phone call. Every year since, they've returned to those same gravel roads. Some nights, when the wind shifts across the fields, they say it sounds like the echo of footsteps on stone, faint, uneven, fading into the dark. It's become local folklore, the road where a voice once said, "Oh shit," and then was swallowed whole by the night. In 2015, a local farmer found human bones in a nearby field, raising hope for closure. But DNA tests proved it wasn't Brandon. Even today, no trace of him, not one confirmed fragment, shoe, or thread, has ever been recovered. The earth simply kept it secret. And so the story of Brandon Swanson endures as one of America's quietest mysteries. No suspects, no closure, just a 19-year-old walking through the dark, talking to his father, believing he was almost home. His final words, 2 simple syllables, have become a symbol of everything we'll never understand about that night. How a calm voice, a clear mind, and a familiar road can still lead to nowhere. There's something unbearably quiet about Brandon's story. No villains. No monsters. Just a young man walking through the dark, a father on the other end of a phone, and a world too vast and silent to answer back. Every time you drive a country road at night, headlights cutting through endless black, you realize how thin the line is between lost and gone. Brandon was almost home. Maybe he saw the lights of his town. Maybe he thought he could make it on his own. Maybe he did, and the world simply forgot where he went. For Brian and Annette Swanson, that silence became their mission, to make sure no other parent ever waits through the night for a call that never comes. Because sometimes, the scariest part of a story isn't the crime itself. It's the sound of someone you love saying, "I'll be fine." Then, the line goes dead.